as you know, Madison Square Garden does not pay real estate taxes. It has been the case since 1982. So we're going on to 40 plus years of being entirely tax exempt. They don't pay $1 in real estate taxes. This is obviously unacceptable. There's a number of legislations with the state legislature that call for the repeal of this tax exemption. We are going to continue to advocate for that.
What is this plan? It's our roadmap for federal action. It's kind of saying, what is the federal government going to do? And then it also gives you all kind of a blueprint that you can then use to tailor to your respective community.
Our campaign is to pass statewide right to counsel. We're working in the Right to Counsel Coalition and with over 100 statewide partners to pass this legislation. It would guarantee the right to a free attorney for all New Yorkers facing eviction in all types of cases that could result in eviction. And building on this conversation that we've just been having, we know statistically that this policy prevents homelessness and keeps folks in their homes. So that's why we're fighting for it.
HO 195 is still the priority. It was introduced by Gail Brewer and Carlina Rivera. And now the coalition to end apartment warehousing is also looking at other cities' vacancy tax because there's some success in those other cities. And while it's not perfect, it's worth looking into. So Intro 195 is still the priority, but we're working with Linda Rosenthal on a vacancy tax that we could impose on landlords who are purposely keeping apartments off the market.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. This is, I'm going to be actually pretty brief. This is just an opportunity to give you guys an update on what Community Board 5 has been doing, as well as what is going on with the Penn Station area. So as you may recall, Community Board 5 launched a community-led plan, which is really an effort to rezone and create a framework for what we believe would be a desirable plan for the area around Penn Station, as well as addressing the issues at Penn Station. We are hard at work with this process. We partnered with a non-for-profit so that Community Board 5 can have a fiscal sponsor. We have finalized that, so we are able to receive contributions that will help us hire the technical support that we need. Land use planners, engineers, urban designers. We want to do a very rigorous work, not just saying and stating what we want, but really getting more into the details. I think that on that, hopefully I will be able to come back to you guys with a more well put together presentation of where we are. We're going to have a number of community engagement events. They're going to be very critical. We really want to hear from all the stakeholders. It's a complicated area because the stakeholders are numerous. Commuters obviously are big constituency of Penn Station. They use it on a daily basis. At the micro local level, of course, the immediate neighbors, including people who live on Music Street, which is the block on 30th Street that is slated for demolition under the state plan. So we will do this community engagement. We will keep you posted. We hope that you relay the scheduling of these events, and we hope that you will attend. In terms of the state plan, I'm sure that you have heard and read a number of reports along the lines of the state plan is dead. The Vornado has given up on the plan. And although there is much truth to these statements, I think we have to remain very, very vigilant. The GPP, the General Project Plan, which is the state plan to build those 10 skyscrapers around Penn Station, is kind of dead, but it is not totally dead. I think it's a zombie at this point, and zombies are actually very scary. And our goal really is to make sure that it really dies. Right now, it is dead because the market conditions are not favorable. But if these market conditions were to change, whether in the near future or much further away, the plan could reawaken, and we could end up with these 10 skyscrapers with our neighbors displaced and so on and so forth. So it is really very important to continue to advocate and to put pressure on the state administration and legislature so that the plan is canceled. We need this plan to be canceled. We can't just rely on, Vornado's statement or, market conditions to consider that we are in safe territory. Quick segue on Madison Square Garden. As you know, Madison Square Garden sits on top of Penn Station. Madison Square Garden owns the real estate, but in order to operate as an arena, they need a special permit. The special permit expires on July 2023, which is in 3 months. They have started the process of obtaining a new special permit to continue to operate the arena. This process is going to intensify. Committee Board 5 actually voted last week or a couple of weeks ago, basically recommending that, stating a number of things. A, we believe that Madison Square Garden is not compatible with Penn Station. That's actually a very important statement, and that ties into the criteria under which such a permit can be issued. And we basically said that, the special permit should not be issued. We also note that, making any recommendation that would amount to, putting making the garden go dark is simply not sustainable. And we are considering a 3-year special permit so that we can actually consider a move and a permanent solution. Our resolution also notes the issues with the tax exemption. As you know, Madison Square Garden does not pay real estate taxes. It has been the case since 1982. So we're going on to 40 plus years of being entirely tax exempt. They don't pay $1 in real estate taxes. This is obviously unacceptable. There's a number of legislations with the state legislature that call for the repeal of this tax exemption. We are going to continue to advocate for that. We also make a note of the use of facial recognition to discriminate against student patrons of the venue, and we know that this is unacceptable. There's going to be a number of hearings with the City Planning Commission and then with the City Council on this topic. It is really important to mobilize, to come, to testify. Thank you to all of you who testified at my committee meeting. It was very well attended and lots of speakers that really made a big impact. It is important to continue to be mobilized on this issue, to continue to testify. I know it's a huge time commitment. It's a pain in the neck, but this is how we actually are able to move the needle. A mailing campaign or email campaign would also be very, very useful and effective. Send an email to every single council member of the city of New York. The 50 of them will be actually tasked with taking a vote on the special permit. This vote may happen as early as June, possibly July, or the special permit may expire for a couple of months. So we're not totally clear on the dates, but now is the time to tell all the council members, whether they're your council member and you're a constituent or any of the other 49 council members that represent you, that represent the city. It is really important to let them know how you feel about Madison Square Garden and the special permits. Committee Board 5 is going to organize a panel discussion on Penn Station. The date is still TBD, but it is likely going to be April 25th. The goal is really to talk about what needs to happen at Penn Station. I'm sure you've seen some nice renderings and some architects' plans. They're great, they look fabulous, but we really need to talk about operations. I know it's not sexy. I know it's starting to talk about trains and how we move people is much less glitzy than looking at nice architectural renderings, but this is really the conversation that needs to happen. So John, I hope that you will share the date of this event when it becomes available, and I hope that many of you will be able to come.
Of course I will.
So much.
Layla, the architects, are you involving the same architects that was at the presentation at Cooper Square?
No, that's the deal. We're not involving the architects. We think that it's really time to shift the conversation a little bit away from the forum and more to function. So there will be no architects. It will be, really a conversation of substance on, how do we get to move people? What needs to happen at Penn? Do we need an expansion to the south? Which, Community Board 5 is on record saying that, no, we don't. So those will be the topics of conversation. And also, how do we pay for this? This is very critical, and it's been at the forefront of the conversation. We need to figure out what we need and how we're going to pay for it. So that will be the core of this event.
Yeah, I want to have a conversation about a forum, so to speak, about a vision for the future that includes a lot of housing. And I think that would be great to have you and of course, Rob. Rob's here with us. You've met Rob before, Rob Robinson.
Yes.
As far as, and I think it would be good for us to get involved, and Rob too, as on that aspect, on the humanity side, as far as housing goes.
Yes.
Are you planning on having a board, a makeup of community members too, as a board itself, or just how would you?
Yeah, so for the community-led plan, we are putting together a steering committee that will basically, be much more expanded from just, members of Community Board 5, and that will include, advocates, experts. We really want to broaden, the input that we're getting, and we're going to organize a series of events, workshops, public engagement types of events that will be by theme. There will be one on public realm, another one on housing, another one on urban design. So we really need to hear from people, what they want, what they think this area should become, so that we can move forward and make recommendations that are really, grounded in what the people want.
Yeah, and we have also, of course, Ted Houghton, and who is on our board. We can certainly fill that board with some experts and some people who have been fighting on the fronts on these issues. Carol Lambert, I don't know if you know Carol. She's has a wonderful history. She's on our meeting today. This morning. So Carol has written books on the housing issues. There's some really great people. I know you've met quite a few of them through our meetings here, and I want to help you with that and too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate it.
Any questions for Layla? And we'll speak about the forum, outline for a forum to come up. Yeah, and we'll speak that offline and see if we can set a date.
Yeah, I would love that. I see that Luana has her hand up.
Luana, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, John. Hi, Layla. I'm going to try my camera. If it starts to buzz, then I'm going to go out. How you doing, everyone? So Layla, I've worked with you on many different occasions and protest with you on many different days and times, and also petitioned with you in the past. So I'm concerned that when we talk about the housing issue, I'm concerned because many of the luxury condominiums and many of the luxury buildings have been built under Community Board 5's approval. So I was wondering, how is that, how is the new area, the area around Penn Station, how is that going to be looked at for more affordable housing in our area? So if you can address, we have like about 5 or 6 new buildings that are luxury condominiums and luxury buildings. And I'm just wondering, how does the Affordable Housing Act and the Affordable Housing Period fit into the plans that Community Board 5 has approved? Thank you.
Yeah, so a few things. Let's start with luxury condos actually don't come to community boards. They're built as of right. So it's not like we support them. When we have the opportunity, we actually oppose them. Secondly, the programs to build affordable housing are programs that exist, and we actually don't support them. One of them, the most often used is the 421A, which actually sunset last year, but is still in the books and will expire in 2026 or maybe 2030, based on what this legislature budget negotiation decides. So these programs, very unfortunately, are the programs that are most popular, and this is why we end up with the kind of housing that we end up with. We actually have very little of that in CB5. But that's exactly the point and the purpose of our initiative. We basically believe that these programs don't work. We don't support them. We're on record ad nauseam saying that they don't produce the kind of housing that we need. The housing that it produces is actually not affordable. That is under the affordable label. And then market rate real estate in our district is just so outrageously crazy expensive. Billionaires Row is a prime example. So what we're basically going to do is figure out what kind of programs exist and could be used to actually develop truly, deeply, and permanently affordable housing, and also what kind of programs we could create so that we achieve this goal. We all have Penn South in mind. I was actually very heartened to see and read that Gary LaBarbera, who is the leader of the big construction union, published an op-ed in which he makes the case for the Mitchell-Lama model of housing development. And we haven't had a Mitchell-Lama development in decades. It's very encouraging that a big union leader is actually taking this position, probably pissing off a big part of the real estate industry. But it is also very important for us to look at these programs and see how they can be implemented. So, we are looking at that. We don't want to create more 421A, like 30% affordable housing that is unaffordable. We actually want to look at those programs that work, that will be permanently affordable, deeply affordable, and will not expire, and put people in housing insecurity.
That's great, Layla. I appreciate how you phrase things too. It's time to piss off the developers, and those. It's been a bad experience with those tax exemptions, for sure. We have to move on. And Andre, just to your point, that's what we're trying to do is save the existing housing and Olivier Center over there, and that's why we're fighting against the Bernardo expansion of this commercialized city that they wanted to build from river to river. So
Andre P wanted to know what is the plan for the Oliveri drop-in center.
Yeah, I just explained that.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't hear that.
That's okay, not a worry. So anyway, we have to move on to our other agenda items. We have a speaker here that's speaking about the national strategic plan to ameliorate or end homelessness. Thanks, Layla, so much. If you have questions, if you want, I can bring Layla back just for her to speak on this issue in detail in the future when they, as she mentioned, she's going to have more information for us, and we can discuss this in more detail. So let me know in the chat if you want to, and I'll be happy to open up, really focus on this a little deeper in a meeting. Thanks, Layla. Rob, are you still with us?
I'm here.
Okay, so we're going to have Nichele on, and you've had a conversation with Nichele. Nichele is the next agenda item. You want to kind of steer this?
I'll just give folks an overview of what the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness is. So Nichele Carver is the regional district for the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. This was an organization originally formed in 2010 by the Obama administration with the goal of ending homelessness in 10 years. It was consisting of 30 government agencies at the time. It was a little bit of a challenge. They refocused at that time to focus on veterans homelessness.
Oops, Rob, you went mute. Rob,
I
you went-
apologize, my fault. The focus after 2010, when they realized that that was a lofty goal to end homelessness in 2010, reorganized themselves to focus on veterans homelessness at the time, but since have again taken a step back and done a new strategic plan called All In, which I'll put in the chat in a minute, with the focus of reducing homelessness in the next 2 years by 25% and a long-term goal of ending homelessness. I've been blessed to, as many of you know, I've spent a lot of time working in the continuum of care. As a person with lived experience, that has given me access to both different levels of government here in the city at the state level, and in particular in Washington at HUD and some of the other places. And I was blessed in February to host for an afternoon Nichele and Jeff Olivet, the executive director, and they met with several agencies here in New York City doing work around homeless issues. And Nichele has honored us with her presence this morning. I think the agency is one that is focused on ending homelessness. I want to be clear here, though. I think their focus is what kind of policies can they help us create to change the homeless situation. This is not a funding stream. I want to be very clear about that, because sometimes people mistake that. They don't have funds to end homelessness. But I do think they can help us change some policies, because if you would ask Rob, we spend a lot of money on an issue that we can't seem to find a conclusion to. So with that, I'm just going to turn that over to Nichele. I think she's perfectly capable of explaining the work of USICH, but I've been blessed to work with both her and her executive director and look forward to a long relationship in the future. Nichele?
Thank you so much, Rob. And thank you, John, for having me in your meeting today. Thanks, everyone. Excuse me. My name is Nichele Carver. I am the Senior Regional Advisor that is assigned to serving New York, New Jersey, and New England. I've been in this role since August of last year. Prior to that, I served as the Homeless and Special Needs Director for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Was in that role, basically in that leadership role for about 15 years. And prior to that, did 10 years of direct service, starting out as an outreach worker, just trying to get people off the street from under bridges, et cetera. And went on to run the Shelter Plus Care program, if anybody is familiar with that, for the city of Richmond. I am based outside of Richmond, Virginia. So you may hear a little bit of Southern twang. That is just how I talk. So just wanted to tell you, if you hear y'all, it's not an accident. That's just how I talk. John, can I have share screen privileges? Thank
Sure.
you.
Let me just find your, here we go.
And while John is finding that, Rob is correct about USICH. We are the only agency dedicated to preventing and ending homelessness. That's our job. We're not a funder. We're not technical assistants. We are just here to try to make sure all of the other government agencies are doing their part to prevent and end homelessness, and that we help hold the federal government accountable, and including ourselves. So
you're going to be their policeman.
Rob is going to drop the plan in for you to read. It's 104 pages. I am going to try to condense this into something that's palatable, that you can, get the nitty gritty from it. But please feel free to read it if you want to. We also on our website have a webinar. That webinar was kind of like drinking from a fire hose. It was a lot of information in a really short amount of time. So I would even break up the webinar into smaller parts, just because it's a lot of information. So what I'm going to focus on today is just talking about the pillars. So first, what is this plan? It's our roadmap for federal action. It's kind of saying, what is the federal government going to do? And then it also gives you all kind of a blueprint that you can then use to tailor to your respective community. It's an all of government approach. So we have 19 partner agencies. all of the agencies participate in the Council on Ending Homelessness for the federal government. The White House is part of this plan as well. So when I'm talking about this has already received buy-in from every other federal agency that's part of it. So it's not like something we have to sell. They were part of it for every step of the process. And so Rob already told you, like, the goal is to reduce homelessness by 25% by 2025. That's a very lofty goal. But if you don't set a lofty goal and you set a very small goal and you meet that small goal, you have not accomplished probably what you wanted to do. So we're setting a very lofty goal with the hope that some communities, like there's a community I'm working with, they're probably on track to end homelessness by 2025. They just have that few people and that many resources. But then there are other places, New York City to be one, that's going to be a much harder goal. And so we have to figure out what policies can we put in place, what can we change, what work can be done with the mayor's office, what work can be done with your state government, just to try to get as close to that number as possible. So this is just what the plan looks like. As I'll talk about, there are 3 solutions pillars and there are 3 foundational pillars. And so I'll go into detail on what those are. So first, our first foundational pillar is leading with equity. And as you see from this quote, it's really about us going out to people instead of expecting people to come to us. And what Rob described with those visits was us trying to start that process. The good part about my role in coming in is I don't have a lot of the old kind of stuff from any old plans because I'm brand new to federal government. And so a lot of these things are things I already believed in, which made it an easy transition for me to come into this role. So it's really about going to folks, and it's not even about, bringing people to the table. It's, y'all probably heard this before, but bringing the table to the people, like actually going to the folks that we're trying to serve and finding out what is the best way to do this work. So these are just some of the strategies. And in this whole plan, there are approximately 30 strategies with 180 action items. So again, if you have any time to go through the plan, you'll see a lot of the things I'm talking about, but I just want to highlight a few of them here. So it's really, we're trying to promote inclusive decision-making and authentic collaboration. We want to pay people for their information. So people with lived experience that are taking their time, we're seeing those as consultants, and we're trying to figure out ways to appropriately pay consultants just like we would any other contracted consultant we had. We have to work with our with the IRS and all the taxation laws, but again, we're the federal government, so we can work with them to help figure out ways to make the laws more friendly to the work that needs to be done. And also modifying federal policies and practices that perpetuate racial and other disparities. We know that across the books, there's so many rules and regs that have been on there for hundreds of years. And so our job is to help, when we see them, to help people change those policies. And President Biden, one of his first executive orders was to address racial equity, to have every agency look at their policies, look at ways that they are implementing racial equity and to change. And then he just issued another executive order in February that kind of forced us to do it if we have not already done it as federal agencies. All right, and I apologize if I'm moving through, but I want to give you all some time for questions. So I'm kind of moving through a little quickly. Hopefully you'll be able to go back to the recording and see more, or if John would like me to come back out and do a more in-depth, I can do that as well. So one of the other foundational pillars is using data and evidence to make decisions. So again, this talks about bringing people to the table. I say bring the table to them, but also we need to not just rely on data that we know is inaccurate. A lot of times the data most of our data is set up for a very specific demographic. And so we need to kind of dig deeper into the data to see what we're not learning from the data. Like most youth are not running out to give us information for surveys. And so when there's a lack of youth in the numbers, it does not mean we don't have youth experience in homelessness. It just means we haven't figured out the right way to reach them. And so some of the strategies for using data and evidence to make decisions, we need to strengthen the capacity of our federal government to use this data to inform our policy. But also we need to do a better job of cross data. So we have data with the VA, we have data with Health and Human Services. We have so many data points and so many times that folks have to give their information that we need our systems to talk to each other a little bit better so people aren't having to spill everything about themselves every single time they see a person and need assistance. It's already extremely intrusive. And so finding ways to do this better and differently is the goal. And then we also need to create opportunities for innovation and research. One of the things that happens when you are dependent on federal money is that it stifles innovation because folks don't want to do anything that is going to cost them their funding. And so we have got to figure out a way, and we're working with HUD to try to figure out ways to loosen some of the policies so that folks can do innovative things. The only way we're going to get out of this situation is to do something different. And so far, I've been in the field for 26 years. I've seen things get better. I've never seen them get to the point where we've ended homelessness, meaning we got to kind of scrap this and start over. Like something has to be different. And it's going to require innovation. It's going to require research, and it's going to require us paying people that we have not normally paid, because those are the ones that are going to help solve this problem. Our last foundational pillar is collaborating at all levels. And when you look at your group, I heard people from so many different types of agencies coming together. That's what's going to help this work. It's going to be folks coming from the nonprofit world, from the for-profit world, the builders, our federal, state, and local governments, but it's also going to be faith-based. It's going to be a myriad of groups coming together, because what we're learning is all too often the homeless services, the group of people for the COC have been narrow in many cases. We need to expand who is part of that conversation, because the COCs have been in existence since 1999 was when like it became a mandatory thing, and there are over 300 COCs. I only know this because I was hired under a demonstration grant for a COC. That was like my first real job out of school. So it was like 98, 99. All right, so collaborating at all levels. So we want to have collaborative leadership, meaning leaders that don't need to be on the top, leaders that lead from behind, that lead from following. And we have to have that everywhere. We cannot have, and this is no slight against anybody in particular, but we can't have mayors acting as kings and queens. We need everybody to work together. And we also need to make sure that information sharing that I talked about is at all the levels. And it's not meaning share your personal information, but we need to share information about who we are seeing out in the streets. We need to be very honest about the fact that Black people are overrepresented. We need to say those words instead of just saying BIPOC and people of color. We need to say Black people and Indigenous folks are overrepresented, meaning we have to have strategies that deal with that issue if we're really going to affect change. All right, and so then we start to get in our solutions pillars. And the solution pillars you would think are kind of no-brainers. However, we haven't been able to do it so far. So it means we need to put a lot more effort into figuring out how to make these solutions work. And this quote right here sums it up. Services are not effective without housing. It's really unfair to expect anybody to do great things when they have to figure out where they're going to sleep every night. Like that just isn't right. But also, once you get somebody in housing, if you don't try to help them address some of the things that their struggles are, then they're probably not going to be as successful. And that's not just for people who were experiencing homelessness, that's for all of us. If we're in our housing and we have issues that we're not dealing with, sometimes they can cause us our housing. And so we need to figure out ways to do a better job of making sure those services are available. And so this is just some of the strategies for, scaling up housing. Y'all were talking about different housing projects. One of the things that we really have to do is start thinking of think of things we have not thought of before. And I know New York City is a very different animal than most of the country in terms of like what you have open and available. But in a lot of places around the country, there are open schools everywhere. Like schools have been abandoned. Turn the schools into housing. You also have buildings that used to be office buildings that after COVID, we learned people could work from home. Those things are available. And so it takes local governments changing zoning rules, the community not fighting those zoning rules, and everybody trying to figure out ways to come up with new, safe, affordable, and accessible housing. Even the people who are living in their housing that are at a different financial base benefit when everybody is housed. And I think that's the messaging we have to, like, it can't be a fight. If you're fighting the people who are fighting against having these projects, it's no winners. Like, if you can't find a way to get them to understand the tax base changes, everything changes. And maybe you want them to lead with their hearts, but everybody's not going to do that. So what does it take? It takes having conversations with folks about how, you know, if we can strengthen our capacity, we can help people with disabilities, we can help people with chronic health conditions. Folks can understand those conversations. And it's not always fun to have those conversations because you might feel like we should be able to just get them to see how to do the right thing. That doesn't work. Like, we know that doesn't work. So then you talk to people in the language they understand. We also need to make sure that there's voluntary and trauma-informed supportive services. All too often, everybody is very focused on just getting through, getting it done, getting the person housed. It's very traumatic going through the systems that we have in place. And we know that. As somebody who used to be an outreach worker, I know at 23, 24 years old, I was not providing the trauma-informed care that I should have. Number one, I just didn't know. And number two, that was not something we focused on. And so we need to do a better job of making sure our people with lived expertise are trained in trauma-informed care and they can help others, but also our folks with learned expertise. So just making sure that we are trying to give people the best that they need, you know, the best that we have so that they can improve their circumstances. And also really using practices that are grounded in evidence. It can't be that somebody did something wrong. And I will use a very specific example from New York City. Somebody pushed somebody in front of a train. That is horrible. Every person experiencing homelessness did not push somebody in front of a train. You cannot change your policies based on a couple of incidents. As horrible as they are, the majority of New Yorkers who are experiencing homelessness have not hurt another soul. That's just, the data supports that, the evidence supports it. And you have to fight the narrative when you hear, well, somebody pushed somebody in front of a train. Yep, and that sucks. And it's not just people experiencing homelessness that are doing that. So, but it's going to be up to you to be the ones who carry that message and don't let it go. Because if you don't have services that are grounded in evidence, we're going to keep having policies that are very detrimental to folks' health. And then we need to improve our systems overall. We know criminalizing homelessness, going back to what I just said, when you start having police interact with people who are experiencing mental illness and homelessness, they're 16 times more likely to die. So police interactions with people with mental health problems, especially acute ones, are 16 times more likely to die than somebody without. So what we know is this truly is life or death. Involving the police in homelessness, that's not the way to go because we have evidence that says this is not safe for the people experiencing homelessness. It also isn't a good use of resources. Police are expensive. You don't use your most expensive resource for something that they're not skilled to do. And so, and I'm speaking that from a level of being a state worker with a very tight budget that I used to make sure we were using that appropriately. I would never have let any of the communities start putting their money towards police if they wanted to keep getting money from the state. And that's just me. All right, so some strategies for improving your system. So it really needs to be an all of government approach. So in New York, it cannot just be you guys as a group. It needs to be your mayor. It needs to be your city council, like it sounds like y'all are going to city council, but it also needs to be your state folks. You have to get everybody involved in this because, as y'all know, New York City, I believe, has the third highest homeless population per capita. And that's only behind California's places. So that says something really big because California has its own separate issues, but it's not freezing in California in the wintertime. People die in New York City because they don't have somewhere to be. People die in California for different reasons being outside, but y'all, the elements are actually the things that are taking people out. We need to talk about how we can remove our barriers and streamline access. Rob gave us a lot of really valuable information about just how difficult it is to move through the system in New York City, whether you're a family or an individual. It's just such a convoluted system that a person who has been to school, can understand this stuff, struggled to understand it. And then you take somebody in the middle of a crisis where your brain is not working the exact same as a brain that is not in crisis, and have them go through those systems. There's a problem. And that's one of the reasons why I dedicated myself to spending as much time as possible helping New York figure out something. And I have no idea what, because it is much bigger than anything I've ever dealt with. But we also need to talk about like removing some of those regulatory, like just like the barriers of equity, like having inequitable barriers and not having access. We also have to get rid of those regulatory barriers, those barriers that are put up by different city council members. Like we have to start really pressing people to change how they think about homelessness and people experiencing homelessness. And so prevention, and this one is important because we also need to figure out ways to keep people in the housing they have. We right now have an issue of, if you think about a subway, we have all of the people getting on the subway and nobody getting off. And so if you think about what that starts to look like, there's only but so much room before there's no more room. And right now, our homeless systems are a crowded subway with nobody getting off, but everybody getting on. So we need to figure out ways to turn off people getting on. Right now, we have about 908,000 people entering the homeless services system each year and 900,000 exiting, meaning every year it's having a net gain of 8,000 people stuck in the system. Again, if you keep adding 8,000, you're going to start increasing homelessness and not being able to solve it. So we have to figure out ways to prevent homelessness. We have to start focusing on the different systems that feed into our homeless services system. Foster care, we already know the data, the evidence is that if you are in foster care and you age out of foster care, you have a 25% higher chance of experiencing homelessness in your lifetime. Meaning we need to focus some efforts on figuring out ways to support people that age out of foster care. Like, I mean, that's like an easy one. We know that people who are surviving human trafficking and sexual assault and domestic violence have higher instances of experiencing homelessness. We have to start looking at the places where people are coming into the system and figuring out ways to support them further upstream so we never see them in the system. So it's going to be like walking and chewing gum. We're going to have to deal with the people before they even get to a place of having a housing crisis and dealing with the people who are currently in the middle of a housing crisis at the same time. And then just talking quickly about how we're going to implement all in. So one of the things that is happening is my counterparts, we're going across the country. We're having these conversations with so many different groups, but we're also helping people come up with their own strategic plans, their own blueprints. We are also going to be publishing an annual performance management plan, and it's going to be based on what people are saying when we're out there. We're collecting data. Rob probably remembers, I took probably 7 or 8 pages of notes just from the conversations we were having, because that's feeding into the problems that we see and what can we do as the federal government to affect change in those areas. We also are planning to update the plan annually. It's not going to be a plan that we've created and now it's here, ta-da, we're done. It's going to be something that we have to keep looking at and massaging and making better. And how do we measure our progress? Some of them are easy. Are we decreasing the length of time people are experiencing homelessness? Are we decreasing returns to homelessness? But remember, it's not that we are coming there to your community with money. We are just helping you figure out strategies. What this says is, how good of a job did we do getting people to come together and figure this out? And then how you can use All In, especially as your group. I would really say you guys are going to be able to be the educators. You're going to be the ones out on the street changing the narrative. Right now, we have too many people who are not experiencing homelessness, who are not even dealing with homelessness, given the narrative of what homelessness is. And it's going to be up to you all that are in this every day to speak a different language to help that narrative change. And then this is just ways that you can get this information. You can reach out to me. And I know it's only a few minutes, but if there are any questions. And again, I know I flew through that and I apologize, but I wanted to make sure we got to at least a place where you could ask questions if you had any.
Nichele, that was great. Got me excited. I can see lots of things to work on and to work with you on. And I have a few questions, but let's, I see a few hands here, and Nancy and Ruth here too. Okay.
Hi, thank you so much for that presentation. My question was, where is it that you were sort of preaching to the choir? I know a lot of people on this call 100% agree with everything that you're saying and even the process, and a lot of us have been doing that for a long time. I feel like you're saying you're pulling this data together so that it could make some changes in policy. Are you setting up, how can people reach you to give you data? How are you collecting that data? I know could you say more about the management report? I mean, is this conversation going into your report? Is that, because I feel like we didn't give you that much data yet anyway, but how does that happen?
Oops, sorry. One of the things is, like, I'm talking to you guys now, this just goes into how many presentations. This is a very metric of just how much am I getting out in the streets. There's a very different conversation, like the half day we spent with Rob and some of the folks. That was where we were just collecting information. Some people, I will say, are sending me data. I go to city council meetings sometimes that are very uncomfortable because people are fighting. So this is the choir. Most of the people I talk to are not the choir. They are people who strongly feel like we should not be mixing people experiencing homelessness with people who are housed. I mean, that's like, they're just very clear. So this is a nice, easier conversation than the ones I typically have, which is a lot of people who are not interested.
Yeah. If you get them unhoused, then they're no longer homeless, are they? It's that simple. We've all get close there. We're all some of us are closer than we think. Luana?
Thank you. I'm sorry, my camera is not working. Thank you so much for that in-depth report. That was really very, very interesting. I just have 2 questions for you. My first question is in regards to the lack of federal operating and capital support funds that contributed to the privatization of NYCHA. We know that NYCHA has many minority residents, and the contribution, the changes in NYCHA in the Section 8 and Section 9 would possibly contribute to homelessness. Is your agency involved in ensuring that the retention of the homes for NYCHA residents is sustained? And my other question would be, when you talk about regulatory changes and systematic delays and programmatic regulatory and other boundaries, one boundary I think is the HUD boundary of measuring income levels according to the median income in a specific area. Because if areas are developing luxury housing, it changes the income in that area, which would prevent many people from obtaining affordable housing. So is your agency involved in monitoring and regulating and maybe changing the HUD metrics for area incomes? Yeah,
So let me answer first question. So y'all know
Thank you.
America, 50 states, every state gets to decide exactly how they do most things. And so while we can kind of do overarching, kind of these are some requirements, there are a lot of federal rules. When the state of New York says this is what we want to do with state of New York funds in terms of your voucher programs, the federal government, we can't come in and say you need to do something different with your funds that, you know, your federal, I mean, your state funds. That's New York taxpayer dollars. Also, and just to be clear, I think Rob said it, it's not just that we're not a funding agency, we're just kind of the conduit to try to get everybody together. We have no regulatory oversight of HUD, of HHS. They're our partners. In fact, our chair for the council comes from Veteran Affairs, and the co-chair is from HHS. So we're all working together, but we have no regulatory oversight of HUD. So we will sit down and say, you know, when you cut these funds, this is what's going to happen, and help them understand it. But the powers that be at HUD make the final decisions. And I will say a lot of times they listen. If you knew about the special notice of funding opportunity that was out last year, a lot of that was in response to some of the things that we found during our discussions where people were saying it wasn't enough money to do some of the work. And also the thing to remember about the money comes from Congress. So if Congress cuts money, the agencies have to deal with what they have. They can't go back and say, Congress, can you give me more money? And I do apologize, John. I have another engagement right after this, so I can take like one or two more questions. Then I need to jump to the next one. I apologize.
Sure. No need. I want to get one question myself in. Rue, go ahead.
Hey everyone, Rue here, Help NYC. Thank you, Nichele. I'm late. I wish I would have known you had been here. You're a great worker on this effort. You said about like, we aim into you talking about people actually getting together and thinking about people, because we've been throwing money at homelessness for years and it's not working. Money does not solve everything. However, something that I think falls into your ballpark is advocating for the fact that the reason we're having so many problems is because federal grants do not cover administrative costs of administering a program. I had to turn down a grant for $300,000, which would have put us into a different audit bracket with the federal government, and we can't do that grant. I did it 2 weeks ago. And because we can't audit that money, we couldn't take the grant. And I wish governments would consider that in their funding. No administrative costs. It takes money to do payroll. It takes money to administer grants, and they will not pay for it. And that is part of equity. If you want to be innovative, you have to build the equity in there so the organizations that don't have to keep a salary for 8 people they don't need can administer a grant that will make change. Come to the communities that have been pushed out because of situations just like that. I hear this time and time again. There's the money out there, but there's no support in administrating that money. And where do we get that? Where do we get that administrative money to administer your grant? You want the work done? but you're not going to pay to administer it. And that's what happens, is that these big organizations, I can name a few in New York, we know who they are, get these grants and they're not effective because they're just adding more money to the old way of doing things. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you so much. I love your office. So.
And Ru, I just want to answer what you're saying is absolutely true. I will say when my budget for Virginia was 15.7 million. Price sounds small, but Virginia is not a huge state. So it was one of the few times that we had state money. I think it's 13 states in the country that have state money going towards homelessness. To get increased admin took me going to the General Assembly year after year, begging them to let me change it. And when they let me change it, they let me change it from 5% to 7%. So again, this is more of an advocacy to lawmakers.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it really is a begging of lawmakers to make some concessions to change it. Because again, that was a couple of years in a row of going in front of the General Assembly for 2%. And I know people felt like that was nowhere near enough. But the fact that we got it, yeah.
Great.
And I would just jump in here to say, this is
Yeah.
Rob real quick. That is a fight going on in New York State right now to increase that funding for general operating funds. And yeah, that's going on. Ru, I'll reach out to you separately about that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry to be late, everyone.
Well, no. Nichele, just, I know you're in a hurry, so I'm going to make this brief. First of all, what do you need from us? And number two, if we could spend some time in a meeting, I can bring some brilliant people to you. Would you like to do that in person, on Zoom, maybe hybrid? Would you spend several hours with a group and have this discussion, videotaped and live, and we could provide you lots of people with lots of expertise that could help. Do you need that? And would you like to do that?
Love that. I think that would be good, because I think more than anything, just spending time trying to craft a narrative to help you guys move forward, because y'all are the fighters in the community.
Right.
I will say some cities, yours being one of them, is not always excited about the federal government coming in and saying this is what should happen, period. And so I do not go into the mayor's office and I can't have the same conversation that I could have with Newark's mayor. It's just, I mean, that's just what it is. And part of this job is realizing what conversations I can have with who. New York, you guys are gonna kind of have to be the conduit to get those conversations going, but I do not mind behind the scenes giving you as much data and background information as possible to help support the fight.
Well, I think we could use your help with that to urge other people to come together, as far as in the political world. What we could use, I know you said you don't provide funding, but this is maybe something you can do. You talked about basically marketing when you talk about messaging and that sort of thing. Can we rely on you as far as helping us with that, constructing maybe a messaging, graphics, that sort of thing?
It's a little bit out of my purview, but I can at least share with you what other people do.
And
Like
what
I can share other communities' messaging and marketing with you.
And you're doing some messaging and marketing too, right? Okay, so
We're
that
trying to, yeah.
Yeah, so that could be, it's going to require lots of marketing and messaging. And I think if we have our messaging marketing honed in, and you're helping to get that out there, and pushing that and budgeting that on your side, that would be a big and ongoing. I mean, there's constant messaging marketing for the other side, but when it comes to this need, and changing people's minds, it's going to require an intense amount of marketing.
I agree.
Okay.
Well, thank you guys for your time. John, we'll be in contact to try to schedule some things.
Okay. Well, I don't want, I see a new face here, Epiphany Adams. I just thought maybe she has a short one.
I have a very short observation because I work in the community, and we, the organization I work for happen to have a lot of transitional housing programs, shelters. And one of the things that we're dealing with right now is we have a lot of asylum seekers, and we have families that we don't know what we're gonna do with them when it comes to helping them transition back into society or finding their path. So I was wondering if maybe this is something that can be talked about in the future when it comes to the asylum seekers. And I tried proposals.
Epiphany, that sounds like another conversation, but hold that. I want to let Nichele go. Nichele, I'm sorry, I saw a new face and I just wanted to, I thought it might pertain to what we're a little closer, what we're talking about with you. We really appreciate having you so much, and we look for more conversations with you. And Rob, anything to add?
I just want to thank Nichele. I know our job is a tough one. She's constantly moving and constantly visiting different locations, but I felt that her and Jeff were both sincere when they were here and said they want to know more. So I'm sure they will re-engage with us in the future. And they haven't been shy about me sharing their contact information. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Nichele.
Maybe we'll come out to Virginia, right? Virginia to see you.
That would be lovely.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all so much.
I'll be down.
Have a good rest of your meeting.
Okay. Epiphany, did I say your name right? I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. My name is
Epiphany. So you
Epifania.
have you deal with asylum seekers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I have Katy that's presenting and so forth. Let's if maybe we can get back to that. Is there a specific ask that is this first time you're joining us, correct?
No, I've joined you before. I just haven't spoken. I'm just here to listen, and I thought that this is a part of the homelessness crisis that we're facing. And I was just looking for ideas, solutions on what we can do to help these individuals and these families.
If I could just jump in here, this weekend, if you can all see, I'm wearing a hat that represents the landless workers movement from Brazil. There is a person that has been touring the US that I know very well. Her name is Cassia, and we brought her to Good Shepherd Church out in Brooklyn on Saturday. And I brought her to Good Shepherd because I know the pastor there, Juan Carlos Ruiz, who is focused on this particular issue. And we had a great conversation with Cassia, talked directly to people who were going through a food program and people who were going through an English as a second language program. And I decided with Juan Carlos and one of his staffers to have a bigger conversation. So I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. If you could email me, I'll invite you to that meeting, because I think we're all going to come together and try to figure out a way that we can go to the city and try to move this along, because I agree with you. People are stuck. It's a bad situation.
Yeah.
I don't think the city's going to give us the answers we want. We're going to have to find the answers. So
ourselves.
Thinking about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you. And yes, I will definitely reach out to you and anyone that wants to seek for solutions for them. And I think that immigration services would be the perfect way of going about it. Like if we help these people transition back, at least get jobs, get work permits and stuff like that would help them at least contribute to the society in New York. And then eventually we're going to be able to transition them back and get them apartment to not have all these people in shelters. Thank you so much.
I wanted to say something to that in terms of solutions and how to look at things. In terms of how I look at them too. My mother's an immigrant from Venezuela and my father from East Africa. And I will say this, I think every immigrant needs what every New Yorker needs. And that sometimes when it comes to shelter support, that maybe there isn't a separation there. So we have people there, and we have people in New York, and no matter what, there's still people. Almost separating out the problem in and of itself silos the solutions. If the point is that we need housing, then we need housing for everyone, which includes anyone who's in New York City who needs shelter. I think it's almost a politically divisive way in which to come at an issue that human beings are seeking the same solution. New Yorkers are seeking jobs, they're seeking opportunity, they're seeking housing, they want to feel safe. I mean, that's a human thing. That's not an immigrant thing. And I think when we join forces, we're more powerful. And we're way more powerful, and we stick to the point.
That's brilliant, Nancy. Nancy, that's so brilliant. And we always talk about breaking down silos. So yeah, and email me if you have a specific agenda item you want to put on for next week, and let us know about the outcomes. I'm sure it's going to be good. I think that's brilliant, Nancy. We have to get to Katy. If we don't, I'll tell you what's going to happen. She won't speak to me ever again because we missed doing some outreach. She wanted to do some phone banking with us, and she also has some updates. Katy?
Yeah, John, I'll never not be speaking to you. No, I appreciate it so much. Thank you guys for making the time. And I'm really glad to have heard Nichele's presentation. It was really interesting, and I learned a lot. So thank you. So I wanted to start with a quick update on some conversations that we've had with your folks as legislators. And I believe most of the people in the council, your legislators, are Liz Krueger and Tony Simone, right? For many folks. Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll start with just an update on our conversations with those two legislators around our statewide right to counsel bill. And then I'll talk about where the bill is at in the budget generally, and then we're going to do a really brief phone bank because, as folks know, the budget is extending until at least April 10th, it seems like. So just a quick reminder for folks that haven't been in our previous conversations, our campaign is to pass statewide right to counsel. We're working in the Right to Counsel Coalition and with over 100 statewide partners to pass this legislation. It would guarantee the right to a free attorney for all New Yorkers facing eviction in all types of cases that could result in eviction. And building on this conversation that we've just been having, we know statistically that this policy prevents homelessness and keeps folks in their homes. So that's why we're fighting for it. We're in our second year of our campaign. This is the first year that we've run a budget campaign. So last year we were fighting for a piece of legislation. Now we're fighting for that same amazing piece of legislation, plus the funding that we know will be needed to implement it. And we have a lot of support across both houses in the state legislature. We have built a really strong base of support for this bill. The assembly member who represents many of the folks in this room, Tony Simone, he's a new legislator. As you guys know, he's been an incredible supporter of right to counsel. So if and when you talk to him and you have conversations with him about anything else, please mention you are so happy and proud to see his advocacy of right to counsel. I think we really want to encourage that to continue moving forward. He's actually writing an op-ed about his family's experience facing eviction, and we've placed it with Gotham Gazette, and so that will be coming out soon. And I'll send it to John. It would be great if his constituents could promote that, share on social media, share it to your networks. We've also been in close touch with Senator Liz Krueger's folks. And that is one place that we're going to need support moving forward to really push and ensure that she'll support right to counsel. So the senator she meets with us, and she and her staff meets with us, and they're very transparent. And so I think that's a really good thing. Actually, a lot of the times when we meet with legislators, we walk away sort of feeling like we didn't get the information we need, or we're actually actively sort of hearing something that's not true. Krueger's folks tend to be really transparent with us. So that's helpful. We actually sort of have a realistic sense of where she's at on this bill. She's in a very powerful position, as you all know, within the budget process. And so she's not usually sort of stepping out on legislation as part of this process, but in the long term, we would like to see her co-sponsorship and support of this bill. She did this work herself, so she's really familiar with the importance of representation when someone's facing eviction. So like the sort of fundamental issue she really gets. She has a lot of concerns around, like, we're fighting for the most robust, effective version of this bill. And actually a lot of legislators, and this is sort of how it is in state politics, they want to water down the bill in various ways. They want it to be narrower. They want it to apply to sort of the bare minimum demographic of folks. You know, as advocates, that is not our position. We feel like we need the strongest possible bill. We need everything that our communities need, and we don't want to compromise. And so we're really still in the early stages of our campaign, and we're pushing for the full version of this bill. We want it to cover comprehensively everyone who's facing eviction, and we want it to cover not just formal eviction proceedings, but cases where folks are going to get, and folks are regularly displaced. So, you know, illegal lockouts, really dangerous repairs conditions that force folks to self-evict or live in, you know, unhealthy and unsafe situations. We need this bill to cover all of that. And our sense is that her critique is like, this bill is too broad. So she, you know, her staff last time when Alex, I think he's still on the call, Alex and I met with them, they sort of discussed, oh, have you guys considered an income cap? Have you guys considered insuring counsel, but for some folks, ensuring it's a paralegal or a court advocate rather than an attorney? So she's sort of thinking about ways to water this bill down, actually, and to narrow it. And I think her concern is really with the capacity of legal services providers. This is a concern that a lot of legislators have. Our stance on the capacity of attorneys is that, you know, attorneys right now are really strapped. They're actually leaving the housing law profession. They're way over caseload. They're not paid enough most of the time. So we really see that as an actual material problem that attorneys are facing. However, we see it as a problem that is constructed by courts moving a very high volume of eviction cases forward at a very fast rate. So it's true that attorneys have a capacity problem, but this problem could actually be solved, yes, by hiring more attorneys, but also by ensuring that cases move at a speed that matches attorney capacity. And this is really what we're pushing for. We're saying courts need to prioritize due process over speed. And this is really a moral argument that we are asking legislators to make. You know, there's obviously a lot of pushback to slowing down eviction cases. The powers that be would like to move eviction cases forward as fast as possible. Our stance, again, is like the priority needs to be ensuring that tenants are represented before they go in front of a judge. And once they've ensured that, the case can move forward. But we really don't need to move eviction cases this fast. As folks know, I think eviction cases move faster than any other kind of civil case. And they move that fast really for racist and classist reasons, because it's mostly white wealthy people who are suing for eviction, and this affects the court's sort of prerogative to move eviction cases so fast. So we really, with not just with the senator, but with all legislators that have these kind of concerns about attorney capacity, we're really going to be over the next year building out our campaign and making this case. That yes, we need funding for attorneys. We need to build out the resources and capacity of our legal providers, and also we need to ensure that courts mandate and uphold right to counsel and ensure due process before cases move forward. So I think that's really going to be where we're at with her, is continuing that conversation into the future. We are going to meet with her post-budget. We met with her staff, Alex and I, in this past month, but after the budget, we're going to meet with her directly, and any folks from this space that would love to join, we would like to have you. I think it's really, really important that we, you know, not immediately in this week before the budget is passed, but moving forward, we really build out a strong base of support for this in her district, and folks that are putting pressure on her and saying, we need everything the tenants need, and we can't settle for, you know, a piecemeal program or some funding here and there. We need a true right to counsel. So please do let me know. I'm going to put my email in the chat. Do let me know if you're interested in helping to bring her on board. It would be great to have your support. And then I'm going to stop there and just ask if folks have any questions, and then I'm going to engage us in a brief phone bank, because we are still in a state budget process that was supposed to end on April 1st. it's continuing until at least April 10th. And so we actually have more time to continue pushing for our bill. And we're going to make some really easy calls right now. But before I do, I'm just going to pause and see if folks have any questions.
Katie, my question is about the phone bank. Who are we going to call? Assemblymember Joyner or?
No, so we're actually going to call leadership. We've really determined like our sponsors are, they are pushing for what we want to see. And the problem is leadership. And leadership has a ton of power in the budget. It's sexistly called 3 men in a room, the budget negotiation between, now it's 2 women and a man. But it's really that the 3 leaders, the leader of the assembly, the leader of the Senate, and the governor have huge power over this process. And so they're the ones that we're going to be calling today.
You do a great presentation, Katy. Have you been in touch with CASA and all the housing tenants? I'm sure you have. You're connected with them, right?
They're our muscle and our leadership. Yeah, they're the ones that are going to win this bill. Yeah.
You did an event not too long ago. How many people did you have with you? You did some lobbying.
Yeah, up in Albany on the 14th of February, we had about 150 t-shirts and they were all gone. So we think we had in the ballpark of about 150 people throughout the day. So we're really building an amazing movement around this bill. We're still kind of in the nascent stages actually, but yeah, we've just in the past year really tremendously grown the support for this bill around the state. So that's exciting. Even if we don't win this year, it's really exciting.
Sounds like you could, it'd be great to have you with us if we get this committee going to meet with Nichele. Sounds like you'd want to be involved with that, correct?
Yes, I would definitely want to mention to Katy that there is something really important happening also. I'm in the community, our organization, NYC, not only provides transitional housing programs, but also eviction prevention programs. And I am the representative in the community of our legal services that we provide to the community. And one problem that I see a lot in the community when I speak to tenants is that the warrants before pre-pandemic were being issued. It took time, it took months, it took stipulations. Now, the judges are signing warrants so quickly without the tenants even going to court. And then it's a surprise for them that they're getting evicted. They get the marshals in their door, they don't understand what's going on, they haven't received any documents. I think that sometimes the landlords go and pick up the documents from their mailbox, or like if they're attached to their doors, they don't see it. I see so many legal blackouts that are legal as per court. So I don't know if that's something that perhaps your organization can advocate for, to see if this process can change, because honestly, I've seen so many tenants getting evicted and they didn't even know they had a housing court case. And I look on the website, look on the eCourts website, and I look at the history at the timeline of the case, and the cases were served like 2 months ago. They already have a warrant for eviction, and the tenant have never been to court. So maybe that's something that to me is very concerning. I don't know who to advocate about that, but I felt like I needed to say something to you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Katy. Sometimes the process itself is going to be hard to change, but there are steps you can take when you get that warrant, though. And I think it's probably having that information for them and some guidance through the system to jump in there and stop the situation as it's happening. It's scary. It's nerve-wracking. I have a story to tell, but I'm not going to do that because we need to move on. Katy, anything to add with that?
Yeah, I'll just say in our statewide right to counsel bill, we are requiring the courts notify tenants when they're in the first court papers that they have a right to counsel. And then if the court process proceeds and they haven't been given time to find counsel or been notified, then actually a warrant can be vacated. So we put in a lot of ways in this bill, not only that the court has to sort of support enforcing right to counsel, and then also stopgaps, like if they don't do that, supports for the tenants to be able to fight that in court.
That's for a new bill, right? New bill?
Say
Is
that
that a new bill, or is that the?
No, that's part of statewide right to counsel. So there's like enforcement mechanisms built into the bill. We really see that as crucial, because we know that the courts actually will not play ball and enforce tenants' rights. They don't do that right now, unless we mandate that they do. And just quickly, because I saw Andre had a comment in the chat. So Andre, attorneys are super important for tenants, even if they are can't pay their rent, and ultimately they may get evicted. An attorney can buy tenant time. A tenant is so much more likely to get connected to all sorts of resources, right? Not just one-shot deals, but all sorts of resources if they have an attorney and a community organizer that they're working with. And then really crucially, tenants are so much more likely to raise defenses, which most tenants who are getting evicted are facing some kind of habitability issue, oftentimes have faced some sort of harassment. Tenants can raise those defenses in a countersuit, but that's really hard if you don't have an attorney. So there's many, many benefits, even if a tenant can't pay their rent. And we know that also in terms of just the overall effectiveness of the bill, in terms of really changing landlord behavior, we know that landlords sue far less across the board when tenants have a right to counsel. In terms of changing court and judge behavior, we know that we need to establish a right to counsel for all tenants facing all types of eviction. We know that's what's actually going to effectively change the system overall. And so that's another important component of ensuring a right to counsel, sort of no matter what the circumstances are in terms of the eviction.
Great. Well, let's if there's Luana.
Luana, yeah.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Katie. That was a really good little, it's very hard to absorb all the information that we're receiving today. It's a lot of stuff going on all over the place. And that was a really good informational on the right to counsel. I have a question, actually, I think it's two questions. Under the 2017 right to counsel bill, right? They were providing tenants who were under the 200% poverty level, federal poverty level, the right to counsel. So how is your bill different? What does it change? And what does it include that it didn't include? And my second question is, what point in the eviction process does a right to counsel take effect? Thank you.
Yeah, great questions. So this bill hugely would change the game for folks in New York City in a number of ways. So first of all, it would do what I said around mandating that courts enforce right to counsel. And right now, the state court system doesn't have any mandate to enforce New York City's right to counsel law because it's a city law. So we can only regulate courts at the state level. And right now, courts are just ignoring New York City's right to counsel law.
I see.
Really
Okay.
an unacceptable crisis. So first of all, this bill would add an enforcement mechanism that we simply can't pass at the city level. It would also expand the right to counsel to everybody in New York State. And we know, especially in New York City, Long Island, and Westchester, that disproportionate share of folks who are moderate and higher income, the share of folks who are moderate and higher income who are facing eviction has actually grown during the pandemic. So for us, super important. Folks above 200% of the federal poverty line also deserve a right to counsel. And then finally, it would expand the types of cases covered. So New York City's law, it covers formal eviction proceedings, but we want this to cover affirmative cases to defend against illegal lockouts, to secure necessary repairs. If your subsidy is being terminated, any type of way that you might be evicted, we want this bill to cover. And so that also would be a huge expansion of the rights that folks in New York City have. So that's really, and I'll say really the push for this bill began in New York City. Now we've expanded it across the state, but there's a sort of enormous base for support for this in New York City. And then your second question was, I already forgot it.
You explained it. How is your bill different? Yeah, thank you. That was really okay. So I see it makes a big difference. So that was one of the questions. You answered both of them actually. Thank you.
And Katy, Marketing's really important, of course, and getting people on board. And I've been posting your thing pretty consistently in my newsletter. What do you have a campaign that can help us that you're going to be pushing at a particular time or doing or
Yeah, we have a phone bank at 2 p.m. today. But you know what? I'm going to just drop the link in the chat with the phone bank instructions. We actually have a phone bank tool, but the entire platform and system is down. So I made
you have share capabilities. So
yeah. Oh, okay. So do we have time? Because I was going to say if folks need to leave because I know it's 11. I'm happy to drop the link in the chat and people can do this independently. But I would just ask folks to really please do take 5 minutes today and do this independently.
if you have the time, go ahead and
Okay.
they're here. If you guys want to stay on, the meeting is definitely over by 4 minutes right now. We go an hour and a half.
Well,
And
I wanted to say one thing I was putting in the chat. I don't even know the name of the program, but I know in DC, Efiana, they had a program with lawyers went door to door and left information and knocked on people's doors who had language barriers and who were facing eviction and they weren't being responsive. So I just wanted to throw that out as, you know, what they were talking about going to them, you know, early, like what kind, and somebody mentioned CASA as a resource also. So I'm not, I bet New York City has something like that.
yeah, something to dig in on, I think. Katy, go ahead and take it away if you want. People, if you want to hang on to help with the phone banking, I'll leave this open. We'll stay on. And if you have time, right, Katy?
Yeah, it's literally just 5 minutes and it'd be really
let's
helpful.
do it.
So I'm going to share my screen. So I put, again, we have a phone bank tool, but the entire platform and system is down today of all days. So I just made this really simple. This is the script. These are the 3 numbers at the top. And in all likelihood, you're going to be leaving a voicemail. They're being inundated with calls right now. And so what I ask is that you call Speaker Carl Hastie in the Assembly, Majority Leader Andrew Stewart Cousins in the Senate, and Governor Kathy Hochul, and leave these 3 voicemails. And if someone actually picks up, you can talk to staff. But it's just a really, really simple message of support for this bill. And then today we're really trying to generate as many calls as possible. So I'll stop talking and just ask if any folks have questions. And if not, really this takes 5 minutes and it's so helpful for us if we can do it.
Should we divide up the numbers into the group or do one call? And
No, everyone should call all 3.
all 3.
Yeah.
Just keep calling. Okay. And and try to make this your own a little bit, you know, I guess, right?
Yeah, this is the script. And then there's a part here where you can explain why this bill is personally important to you. But at this stage in the session, they're sort of just tallying off when they get calls. So really the important thing is like making it clear you support this bill, you want it to pass in the budget. And I see, sorry, Luana has a question.
Yeah, sorry, I have construction going on. So I just wanted to know if this bill were passed, who would be in charge of enforcing this bill?
Yeah, so there's an Office of Civil Representation, a new state agency that's created that would implement the bill. And then the enforcement is really up to the courts. So the courts are mandated in the bill to do various things. And then if they don't, the tenant has like the legal recourse, like I said, to vacate a warrant, to do various other things. And so, yeah, the enforcement mechanism is written into the bill itself. And we've been really fighting hard to make sure that stays in there. As you know, the state legislature sort of always wants to take out like the stuff that has real teeth. And we are really fighting to say this bill needs to be enforceable and the courts need to be required to uphold tenants' rights.
Yeah.
I mean, they do it without our requirements, but we know we need to require them, you know.
Great. Okay, thank you.
This is really super because it needs
It is, it really is.
because it's, you know, it's about optics. They pass all kinds of bills, but then nothing protects us. So this is great. Without this, it really boils down to you know, an exercise. So okay, so we should put ourselves on mute and do this, right?
That's it. And just let me know. I'll look in the chat if you have any questions. I'll put my number too. You can just text me if you have any questions too. Thank you all so much. Thanks for making the calls.
Love is the only way you grow. spent some time about some things, costing a girl love exchange. She moved on to another soul. Ain't that the truth?